What is up, everybody? Hello, welcome. I hope you guys are doing good. It's your boy, Mr. Chidas. I miss you guys. I'm so bored. I'm trying to vibe with you guys, but I guess we'll vibe virtually for now or whatever. But yeah, I hope you guys are doing good. I'm chilling, and I guess that's fine. It be what it be sometimes. I want to leave my house. I would love to go to B Dubs, but it just be what it be? Question mark. But that's fine. It is fine. Anyway, I am reporting to you, not live, recorded, um, about the slideshow that we didn't get to finish on Wednesday. Okay, so yeah. All right. Well, here's class. Here's what we're doing. All right. So very quickly, let me just go ahead and break down where we've been, where we're at, where we're going. All right. So Wednesday we started this new lesson. Okay, talking about Native Americans, Native American history, etc. All right. The goal of this lesson, reminder, is to be able to explain, right, why or what happened in the United States as a result of colonization, what happened to the Native Americans. All right, so yesterday, that's what we did on Wednesday, sorry. Yesterday, you guys read an article about different Native Americans living in the United States and what happened to them as a result of colonization, so that should help you answer that question. Today, we're going to talk a little bit more about that, and we're going to specifically get into the last Native Americans living in the Chicagoland area. All right, so it's more content stuff today. Starting on Monday, or we're gonna try. We will try to work on our next skill, history skill, which is claim building. So we're gonna learn how to write a claim, and we're gonna use everything that we've learned so far about Native Americans to help us practice. Okay, so that's where we've been, what we're doing, where we're going. All right. As always, email me with any questions or anything. Um, but yeah, so let's get into it. Okay, get into it. So 2 days ago we talked Native Americans, right? We went all the way back to the beginning, right? We talked about Beringia, the land bridge, right, that connected North America to Asia, right, which allowed people to cross over, right, and populate the Americas, right? These become the Native Americans, right, and then the Ice Age is over, the water levels rise, the continents become split off from the rest of the world, right, and they are living in isolation from the old world, which, by the way, if you didn't know, the old world and the new world is North and South America, otherwise known as the Americas, plural, and the old world is Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, basically everything else that's not North and South America. Okay, so that's the old world. That's the new world. The reason it's called the new world is because it was discovered. Okay, I you can't tell right now, but I'm using hand quotes, finger quotes, because the traditional narrative is that it's been discovered after those other continents. We know that it was discovered a long time before that, okay? But that's where we get the names from. So when I refer to New World versus Old World, that's what I'm talking about, okay? Anyway, so we have natives, right, living in the New World, right, in North and South America, spread out all throughout the continents, and eventually, right, they split up into thousands of different tribes, right? And this is what we talked about on Wednesday. All these different tribes have their own, their own customs, their own cultures, foods, right? They populated different environments, right? There was some that lived on the coast, some that lived in the desert, in the mountains, in the forest, in the plains, right? So we have all these different kinds of Native American groups living throughout North and South America, right? And then 1492, right? We know Christopher Columbus sailed the ocean blue, etc., right? And that triggers a few things. Okay, number one, it triggers colonization, right? So the very first country to start colonizing the New World was Spain. So you can see from this map, we everything in red here was eventually colonized by Spain. They first started colonizing the Caribbean, right? So the first place that they colonized was what would become today the Dominican Republic and Haiti, right? That's the island known as Hispaniola, right? And then they spread throughout the Caribbean and then onto the mainland, right, in Mexico and in South America, right, at a time owning the majority of the United States, right, all of Mexico, Central America, a lot of the Caribbean, and I want to say like about half of South America. So that's like a lot of land, right? And this sets off, right, like a race between these different European powers to try and conquer as much land as quickly as possible before the other countries get to it, right? So now we have Portugal, the Great Britain, okay, England, we have France, the Netherlands, all right, even Russia, even Sweden tries to get in there and start conquering different lands. Okay, so we have all these European powers coming in, and they're taking up different parts of the world. So you can see from the map, right? The Spanish, right? They take the most of it. They got there first in the red, right? But then we see different parts of it as well too. In the green over here, we have what Portugal took, which would later become Brazil, right? We have French Guiana here. The Netherlands took this part here, which would eventually become Suriname, right? We see the French also in Haiti. Okay, oh, sorry. And up here, where we live, right here, we see the British, okay? And they take over first, right? And we remember this probably from elementary school, hopefully, okay? Well, we know that the British took over the eastern seaboard, which would eventually become the 13 colonies, all right? So we have all this happening, okay? Different countries, or sorry, yeah, different European powers in different parts of the colonies, right? But we can't forget, right, that this land is not open, right? It's not like, hey, you could just come and take this land, right? There's people living here. They've been living here for thousands of years, all right? So what happens to these people? By the way, this is your goal, so pay attention, okay? What happens to the people that were living there? Well, a few things happened, and it also depends on where specifically in the New World and which European power came to conquer, okay? So initially, what happens is disease, okay? And I know I talked a little bit about this Wednesday, but I want to reiterate it because it's really important, okay? The old world and the new world were cut off from each other for thousands of years, all right? We all are familiar at this point, very familiar, with viruses, disease, and herd immunity, right? So we know that when a disease, right, infects a group of people, okay, eventually enough people build up immunity to it to where the disease is really no longer a massive threat to the population, all right? So we have these, what we call old world diseases like measles, mumps, smallpox, etc., okay, that have been infecting the old world for centuries, all right? Well, over time, people of the old world, Europe, Asia, Africa, Australia, have built up immunities to these diseases, right? But North and South America have been cut off for thousands of years, and those diseases never existed in North and South America. So when the Europeans first arrived in 1492, right, we know from global studies, right, remember the themes of geography, movement, what happens when people move? They bring along their goods, their ideas, themselves. One thing including in that is that they also bring along their diseases, right? We know this, okay? This is why as soon as the pandemic hit, people really wanted to close the borders in the United States to stop people coming in and out and spreading disease. Same idea here, right, where people moved, right, from Europe, came to the New World, right, they brought those diseases with them, all right? So what happens as a result? Well, these diseases, right, spread like wildfire because the people, the natives living here, had never been exposed. They had no herd immunity at all to these diseases. So these diseases really just tore through the population. All right, estimates go anywhere from 50 to 90% of the population of North and South America dying, all right, relatively quickly as a result of these old world diseases, right? So that happens, okay? Massive plague, okay? I'm talking thousands, millions of people dying as a result of these old world diseases, right? Now, paired with that, okay, you have to remember the reason why Europeans came to the New World in the first place. The reason why Christopher Columbus came to the New World was to try and find Asia. Okay, why was he trying to find Asia? Well, he was trying to find a trade route, okay, to buy spices from China because spices were selling for very expensive amounts in Europe, right? So he was trying to do that, okay? Now, once he finds the Americas, right, he basically begins to start claiming land for Spain, okay? Because what's special about the Americas? We have a lot of good stuff here, right? We're able to grow a lot of things, okay? And we have gold and whatnot and different minerals, resources, okay, that have never been, right, that haven't been touched the way that they have in Europe and other places like that, right? So he comes here, they start claiming land for Spain, right? A reminder, this land has belonged to the natives for thousands of years, right? So now we have war happening, okay? Because, right, these European powers come, right, and they say, okay, this is our land now, all right? And natives are like, wait, hold on. This is actually our land. We've been here for thousands of years. What's the deal? So now we have armed conflict, okay? We have fighting against each other, right? And you might think, well, the Europeans, there's only like a handful of them compared to the natives there, okay? But remember the other things that are happening, the context at the time, right? As a result of these diseases, the natives lost 50 to 90% of their population. So who's going to be left to fight? Nobody, right? On top of that, Europeans had gotten high grade weapons, right? So the Chinese invented gunpowder, and eventually that reached Europe. So Europeans began using gunpowder, guns, right, and cannons, okay? And Native Americans didn't have that kind of technology, okay? So because of that, as well as losing half or 90%, depending on their population, right, they really didn't stand a chance against the foreign invaders, right? So the Europeans relatively easily, relatively quickly took over these massive parts of the Americas, and that's where we get to where we're at today, okay? Now, the next part of the story also depends on where in the New World you're looking at, okay? Each country that conquered land dealt with Native Americans, right, differently. For example, all right, in the Spanish territories, right, where Spain conquered land, right, they did, right? So they created this what's called the hacienda system, where basically Native Americans were enslaved, right, and had to work the fields, right, that the Spaniards came in and set up. Okay, eventually, right, because of the diseases and whatnot, it wasn't profitable for the Spaniards to use Native American slaves, right? So that's when they started importing slaves from Africa instead too. So that's where we get the beginnings of the African slave trade in the New World, right? But the thing that's interesting about the Spanish territories is that a lot of the times the Spaniards would intermix with the native populations, right? This is where we get mestizos, okay, which is part Spanish, part native, right? So a lot of times, right, Spaniards would come, most of the times it was men, and they would take like native wives and have mixed families, etc. So we see that happening all throughout the Spanish territories. Similar things happen in the Portuguese territories as well, where we have a lot of combination, a lot of mixing between, of course, right, those who are Spaniards, those who were white, were higher up in society, but we do see a lot of mixing, right? Now, in the United